So, Bernice suggested that, I contact this guy. Well, at that point, I had to pay $25, for the first 30 days in order to respond or, write something. So I went ahead and did that. And I would say for about a week or so, um, we kind of sent a few messages back and forth. And, but at the point, at that time, I was thinking, I would write like 2 paragraphs and I would describe my interest and I would, talk about my cats and I'd say, well, do you have any pets? And he would write back like 3 sentences. And when it came to like if he had any pets, he said that he liked to feed squirrels. So I'm thinking, this guy's not very interesting. So, I said to Bernice, yeah, I don't think I'm going to communicate anymore with this guy because he's just not that interesting. He can't carry on a conversation and, whatever. So she said, well, let me look at his profile again. So she sat down and she read through his profile and she said, now, you really don't know what somebody's like until, you actually meet them face to face. So she said, I think you should meet this guy. And you should meet him at Starbucks. And you should wear your hair up. Because I had long hair then. And, she knew that, guys are usually attracted to women that have long hair. So I should just, not look as attractive as maybe I could be or am or whatever. So we set it up that he was going to meet me, the next couple of days from then or whatever. And so I got down there early, and it was actually in a Barnes and Noble, and so there's a Starbucks in there. So I'm standing back in the stacks, like watching the door to, because I knew what he was going to look like. And he always wore these like Western style hats and stuff. And so I came in, and, it's always very like nerve wracking when you meet somebody on a blind date and stuff. So I approached him and I said, are you Steve? And he said, yeah, and so, he bought me some coffee. We sat down, and I had a limited amount of time. I was going to go teach a class on intuitive mandala drawing at this yoga center. And so I brought some examples of my work with me, to kind of share my artwork and stuff. And so I guess I'm just not very clued into relationships because I haven't had that many in my life. And, I was brought up in a very stable household with, loving parents. And, I'd had a string of relationships where I kind of lost who I was in the relationship. And I finally just said, well, it's not worth it to me to be in a relationship where, I end up changing who I am, so I'm just going to work on myself. So for about maybe a decade, I didn't have any relationships, and I was doing lots of meditation, lots of spiritual seeking, lots of group things with other like-minded people, massage therapists, people like that, vegetarians. And so we sit down at this table, and Steve doesn't make any eye contact with me. He immediately starts telling me about his ex-wife. And so while he's telling me about her, he's not looking at me, he's looking everywhere. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm going to hear the story eventually. I might as well just hear it now, And so I let him tell the complete story. And it was a story about how he had been trapped in this relationship and she had gotten pregnant on purpose, and he decided to marry her because it was finally the right thing for him to do, because he'd been a really bad boy, in his previous life, with other relationships and stuff. And so he convinced her that they should get married and raise this child. Well, big mistake, because he wasn't in love with her. And they were married for 15 years, and their kid was really messed up. She turned goth and, all this crazy stuff. So, so when he got done telling me that story, it was my turn to talk. So, I started sort of telling him a little bit about, who I am, my artwork that I like to do. And he locked eyes with me, and he leaned in and he looked at me like he was looking into my soul. And at the time I was thinking, this is kind of weird, but whatever it is, at least, he's paying attention to me. So he didn't seem to be interested in any of my artwork. And, some of it was really beautiful. So, we kind of finished all that, and then we agreed that we were going to meet another time. So, anyway, to make a long story short, I started hanging out with him because it was around Christmas time, and he took like 2 weeks off at Christmas and always worked on a big woodworking project, because that was one of the things he loved to do, was to do cabinetry and stuff. He did all this computer stuff, and so that was like mind stuff. So then he had this working with his hand stuff, and then so I would go and hang out with him in his woodworking shop, which was a 2-car garage that he had converted into this amazing woodworking shop. So, plus, living with Bernice, I didn't really have my own kitchen. So, over the period of a couple of weeks, he convinced me that I should move in with him. And, at some point, Bernice, went to be with family, so I had plenty of time to hang out with him and not be like, my mom's going to notice I'm not coming home, at night, and stuff like that. So, I mean, geez, I was like 50, I shouldn't have been thinking about that kind of stuff. So, anyway, he was on his very best behavior. That's the only way I can describe it. Because, I think it was just, maybe it was like 6 weeks or 2 months after I moved in. It was like something shifted and he changed into this other person. But at that point, I sort of, thought to myself, well, I just moved twice, in a period of months. I had to leave my cottage. I moved in with Bernice, and then, it was like I was in a transition. It wasn't like I was going to live there, long term or whatever. So then I moved in with Steve, and I thought, what am I going to do? I can't move again. I'm just going to figure out if this relationship will work out. So I ended up, because I've been sort of, if I was in a bad relationship, I was the first one to walk out the door. I wasn't going to try and make it work. I wasn't going to try and, talk it out or whatever. It's like, okay, it's not working. I'm leaving. It's, that was my history with relationships. So this time I decided that I would go to Barnes & Noble, and I would go to the relationship section, and I would look through the books and pick out a couple of books on how to work on your relationship. So I got these two books. One of them was called The Dance of Anger, and it's about how women can either be like the Madonna or an evil Satanist. It's like we tend to flip back and forth between those two, and like a witch. Either a Madonna or a witch. So then the other one was called. It was written by a psychologist who counseled violent men, and it was called Men Who Behave Badly. So, because I had this underlying feeling that, well, he had like some kind of rage that was going on in the background, and so I wanted to learn how to, deal with it. And the main thing that I gleaned out of this book was men, for some reason, do not like to be told something more than once. Like when they were children, their mother told them to clean up their room and take out the trash and do their chores, and if they didn't do it, they would just harp on them. And so some men would react, aggressively, maybe not then with their mom, but later on in life, they would, with whoever they were living with, they, if you harp on them, they would just become violent. So I kind of tested it out, to see if, if I said something to him that, he didn't react to, I would just walk away. And what I noticed is that it's like he needed time to digest whatever it was I said, so he would react to it like a day or two later. Like he would pick up the conversation at some future time. And anyway, so I ended up staying with him, and well, I told you about having the surgery with open heart surgery and all that stuff. But in some ways, I feel like maybe he and I had some kind of karma from a past life that we had an opportunity in this lifetime to resolve. And it was my feeling that because I've always been a very calm, kind of meditative person, that he could learn something from me, just by me being me. But apparently, he didn't want me to be me. He wanted me to be somebody that, was like, a woman from the 1950s. That sort of like put her man on a pedestal and just, worshipped him and all this crazy stuff. Well, those days are over. So, anyway, let's see, we're up to 13 minutes now. But it did have a happy ending because, by the time I got out of it, I'm very grateful now that I went through that, because in a lot of ways, I could actually counsel women who are in bad relationships, and help them either get out of it or resolve something, and how to deal. But I can't remember, was I going to tell you how I got on YouTube? Yeah, that was it. Well, anyway, I'm going to have to pick up that story later. But that was my relationship with Steve. So I'll tell you about the internet later, how I got really involved with it.